Welcome to Crosspoint Community Church. I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Brandon. And here's what you need to know this week.
Here at Crosspoint, we want you all to have fun. So, we try to make every task that we do enjoyable for basically everybody.
If you were wondering what those boxes were when you walked in, back there, that's TOM. Stands for Tithes, Offerings, and Missions. And this is how we take offering here at Crosspoint.
Shake that.
Today we wrap up our sermon series, Photoshop My Life, with part 4, palm trees and denture cream.
Kids stuff starts tonight at 6 o'clock, pre-party at 5:45, and the theme is unique. So, we want you to be unique by bringing us your pumpkins, either carved or painted, and we're going to be giving away prizes to the best ones. You don't want to miss that. Starting next week, we kick off our new series, Ghost Stories. It'll be a spooky series that you will not want to miss.
Next week, right after service, we'll be having partnership class. This is basically how you become a member of our church. A partner is basically a member at our church. And childcare and food will be supplied.
Well, that's all we got in the Need to Know this week. If you have any questions, you can stop by our welcome table, or you can go online, crosspointonline.net, or you can check out our app. And don't forget to drop your offerings into Tom on your way out. Clean up on aisle 12.
Would. So, did I come anywhere close? Has anybody seen the Jingles commercial? It's a new snack that it's got so much flavor it makes you yell. Man, thank you. Shirley has one. Oh, okay, we've got a couple that will admit that they actually watch TV probably as much as I do. So, okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Vicki Stigleader, and I would like to welcome you to Crosspoint Community Church, where we are striving to lead people to be passionate followers of Christ. We do that in various and sundry ways, and sometimes we do it by yelling good morning to you. But we won't do that every morning, so if this is your first Sunday, please come back again and see what we do next week. Also, if you are a first-time guest, we would like to invite you to stop by the welcome table on your way out. We have a free gift for you and would like to get a chance to know you just a little bit better. Today, as the video has already told us, is Kid Stuff at 6 o'clock. You, or maybe your children, are to bring a pumpkin that is either carved or painted to express their individuality. So, some of you are such unique people that you might want to start decorating that as soon as you leave this service, okay? But join us at 6, at least by 6. If you start at 5:45, you will find that there are a lot of fun games and activities for your kids, and you might even let the adults take point. Kid Stuff is where kids bring their parents to learn about Christ. And so we invite the whole family to come. I, as a grandparent, come and just kind of watch and participate, and it's a fun time for everybody. Let's see, what else? We are finishing up our Photoshop series today with palm trees and denture cream. I just really don't like that title at all. But anyway, we'll find out what that's all about. And then next week we start Ghost Stories. And don't worry, you won't be afraid, so don't worry about that. At this point, if you would stand, greet one another around you, and we will prepare for worship.
I want to get into a good graduate school, and then I want to take over my dad's business, ENTLC.
My plans basically in the future are to, continue going to college and get my major in whatever I want to major in. And maybe if I want to be a pediatrician, probably go to med school. Probably have to go to med school. But, get my medical degree and eventually start up a practice somewhere and start a family too.
I think as a young married couple, we wanted to succeed in life. We want to start a healthy family and see our kids grow. We want to build our careers, be successful in our careers, and obviously we want to buy a home and just provide for our families.
What I want to achieve in this life, really, I guess, is
a happy home, making sure that our family is taken care of, moving in the right direction, and getting, I guess, just a firm foundation in Christ, raising our daughter to be all that she can be, getting her through school, and then probably also making sure that Clay and I are on the right path for retirement, and so that life isn't always just about work, but we can enjoy ourselves later. Once Bailey is grown and moved off and has her own life of her own, we can enjoy each other and travel and do all those things. So I guess that's what we think about right now.
The things that used to be important, I find no longer are. There was a time when we thought maybe we could get out of debt before we died, and Art and I have decided that we probably won't live long enough for that, to accomplish that. The things that are important don't have anything to do with money. I want to see both my kids married and hopefully with more grandkids. I really want to see my grandchild grow up. And the thing that's most important to me is that they'll have a relationship with the Lord. There was a time when I knew that was important to me, but when you have kids and grandkids, you go on and, you know, you want that for them, and you want them to be better and to have a better life. So, that is my hope.
Recently, I just retired at the end of March to have a new phase in my life, and I knew that I needed to come to Maysville and be with Tammy. I haven't been with my grandkids in many of the years in the past, and this is my opportunity to be here and have an influence on them or just get to know them better, and also to help my daughter do some things that she needs to do. I think the Lord has a purpose for me, and I'm still looking for it, and I always know that I will be serving Him.
Well, good morning. How are we doing? Hey, so we are in the last week today of this series, Photoshop My Life, and this is what we started off with week 1. I want to catch it up real quick if you weren't here. Week 1, we said this: when you trade real for the ideal, you're jeopardizing your future for an artificial past. I said week 1 that you're mortgaging your future for an artificial past. And the whole idea was this, is that we have a tendency to not just compare ourselves to those around us, but we also have a tendency to present a fake version of ourselves, that we want people to think that we are better than we really are. And what happens is that when we do that in the moment, we think that everyone just thinks we're better. But what is actually going on is we're exhausting ourselves, because now in our future it's not hopeful, it's not clear, it's not anything could happen. It's I've got to spend an enormous amount of energy to try and make everyone think that I am who I've already told them that I'm not. That makes sense like that. That we spend our lives and we just expend our energy going, well, they think I'm a good parent, so I've got to do all these things, otherwise they won't think I'm a good parent. Well, they think that I've got my life perfectly together and my house is always clean, so I've got to make sure my house is always clean even though it's not clean. But if anyone comes over, I can only let them stand on the front step, because if they come in, then they're going to know that my house isn't clean. They think my house is clean. I want them to think my house is clean. Amen, husbands? Yeah, there we go. So we started with that. And we said this. We said this is the solution to it. We said you will continue to present an artificial version of yourself until you believe what God says about you. We think that we're going to stop this whenever we get to that level, when we make this friend group, or we get this job, or we get this position, or all these other things. We achieve this thing, and that's the point in time that we'll arrive and we don't need this anymore, and we don't need to worry about that anymore. But the truth is that you'll never. And that you will continue to present that fake version of yourself until you believe that God created you. That God created you, that He did not mess up, and that when He created you, He was completely truthful when He said that it was very good. And so what we've done since that first week, and we've talked about in these weeks 2 and 3 of the series, we talked about the different things that keep us from doing that. So we presented everything week 1 as kind of the introduction, and then since then we've gone, okay, and then there's this part of life that causes us not to do it, and there's this part of life that causes us not to do it. And I want to do that again today as we wrap up this series. And the thing that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about aging. Because I believe that aging is one of the easiest times in our life to present a fake version of ourselves. And as guys, We always want to think that we're stronger or we're more physically able to do things than we had before. And I heard a guy say this recently, and he goes, guys, you go through different stages of your life. You go through a stage when you can do the thing, like whether it's sports or helping someone else, you can do the thing, and then you move into the next stage where you can still do the thing, but it hurts. And then you move into the next stage where you can no longer do the thing, but you tell everyone that you were that much better than you actually were when you could originally do the thing. And then you move into the last stage where you just don't care and you watch TV instead. That's great. And we go through that process. And I think we all experience that. That as we get older, as we age, as the years accumulate in our lives, it's very easy to present a fake version of ourselves. It's very easy to spend our time comparing ourselves to everyone around us. Now, I want to be very clear in terms of how I want you guys to hear me this morning. I obviously am not going to be the expert on this. If you want a good talk about what it looks like to age till 28, I think I can give you that, okay. But beyond that, I'm kind of in the dark. So and even as I was looking at it in terms of what we're going to say and what we're going to cover, I thought, I think we need to talk about this, but I'm young, and I look even younger than I look, and I act even younger than I am. And it's like, how is this possibly going to work out on this? But the more I looked at it, I realized this is a discussion that we need to have because our culture worships youth. Our culture makes youthfulness, looking young, acting young, being physically able, it makes it the pinnacle of existence. And I always laugh, it's almost as if your life ends when you're outside of Coke's marketing strategy. Coke's marketing strategy is 18 to 35. And I'm sorry for some of you who are over 35, because that's probably news to you. And you've sat there and you've gone, I don't get these commercials. Coke, Pepsi, what are they doing? It doesn't make any sense. Or the people frolicking through and the lady with pink hair dancing on the stage, I don't get it. And here's the truth. They don't care. Because you're not young anymore. And so they don't care whether you get it or not. They don't care whether you understand it or not. And we're in such a hyper-worship youth, youngness, young looks, young energy, and there is a lot of positives with youth. I mean, there is an energy there. There's a vibrancy for life that's there. But we get to the point that as soon as you kind of drift beyond that and you're no longer considered young in whatever group that is that you're in, that it's almost as if like it's all downhill from there. And so I knew this is a conversation that we need to have, but I didn't know if I was the one who was going to be able to lead it or start the discussion. And so I just want to be very clear. This is how I want you to hear the words that I'm speaking today. I don't want you to hear it as a voice of authority. And you may be sitting there and you go, yeah, but I never listened to thought anything as a voice of authority. Okay, so we're on the same page then. But I think often as we go through our different studies on Sunday morning, our different discussions, that I can go, okay, this is what the Bible says, this is how I've seen it correlate in my life, and we can all agree that this is true. And we walk out and we go, yeah, that's true. I mean, there's no disagreement. That's true. I may not like it. I may not apply it, but that's true. I don't think I can do that this morning because I was thinking about it and I thought, you know what? In 30, 40 years, I may try to preach on the same topic again and the message might be completely different. And so this is how I want you to hear it today. We're going to look at the Bible. We're going to look at a lot of the Bible. But in general, these are my thoughts. And these are what my thoughts come from. I am not, well, the teens think I'm old. But I don't think most of you would think I'm old. But as I have seen people age, I have seen people age well, and I have seen people age poorly. And I notice, I can observe distinct differences between those two groups as they age. And so I don't want you to hear this necessarily today as a message, as a word from God. Now, He may speak to you. He may touch you in a certain way. And listen to that, okay? Listen to that. But I'd much rather you hear this through the tone of, let's start this talk about what it actually looks like to age well in a culture that worships youth. And this is when I really realized that we need to talk about this. When I was studying beforehand, Proverbs 20:29, it says this. It says, the glory of young men is their strength, gray hair, the splendor of the old. The glory of young men is their strength. The thing that they should be proud of is their strength, their physical ability. But it says that as you age, gray hair is the splendor of the old. Now here's the issue. How can we understand that in a culture where hair dye is one of the most commonly sold products? Now, I'm not, just to be clear, if you do that, whatever that is, I'm not dogging you, okay? Keep buying your hair dye. This doesn't apply, but I've had many people in my life come up to me and go, do you dye your hair? Do you think I would do this? Like every young boy grows up and goes, I just wish I was a redhead. That's what I'm like. Because of the coolness factor, because of the jokes. I really like the jokes. So, sorry. But that's what I want to answer. How can we properly understand a theology of aging, a biblical perspective of aging, when it says gray hair is the splendor of the old, when we dye our hair and we try to hide the marks of aging? So this is where we're going to start. I was reading a book recently. Shocking. I've got to have a better intro for when I read a book than that. And it's called, it's a book by Scott Peck, who's a psychoanalyst, and the book is titled The Road Less Traveled. It's incredible. But in one of the sections of the book, he talks about the sacrifices that come with aging. That we usually think there's a certain point in life that, this is the point in time where I have to give stuff up because I'm getting older. And I want to try to be sensitive on this. But we usually think that point in life, for those of us who look at this with our parents, or for those of you who are older, who can remember this when you went through this with your parents, and those of you younger, will have no idea what I'm talking about. But that point in life where, let's say your parents, you've got to take away the driver's license because it's no longer safe. Or maybe you need to tell them that, hey, this home that you have lived in your entire life, you just can't live there anymore. And we usually view that as the time in life when we give stuff up because of aging. That when we get to those crucial things, and again, I'm not trying to be insensitive on, but when we get to those moments, that's aging. That's the sacrifice with aging. But what he says throughout this book, and it's really interesting, that all throughout your life, you have to give up, you have to sacrifice, you have to lay down certain things. And this is what I've seen. That the people who are willing to lay down, willing to sacrifice things earlier in their life, willingly, not kicking and screaming, are also the people who later on in life are able to sacrifice those same things. It was interesting as I was preparing for this. I've made a friend who's been a huge influence on me. And we have breakfast every couple of weeks. And my friend is 75, so we look at life very differently. And I was asking him, just in preparation for the message one day, and it was kind of an awkward conversation, but it got really good. I just went, hey, I'm preparing for this message on aging, and he was old. Yeah, you're old. And you seem to have done this well, and I was wondering what you thought. And his first response to me was, Kevin, I don't see how anything you're going to say is going to help anyone. I know. That's why we're having this talk. I already know that. But I was going, so what do you think? And this is what he shared with me. And this might be a little too close to home for some of you. But he goes, aging is the hardest thing you go through. And the things that you have to give up keep getting harder as you go through life. And this really put this in perspective for me. Because in some of our family situations, we're at this moment. And he goes, for me right now, I have to entrust choices in my life to people who cannot possibly understand what I am going through right now. I have to give up freedoms and decisions about my finances and my livelihood to people who cannot possibly understand what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling, and I have to entrust them with that. And as we talked further, he said, when you're a kid, you trust your parents because they're your parents, but because they were also a child. But as you move into these later stages of life, you have to trust your kids and other people who cannot possibly empathize, cannot put themselves in your situation and see what you're going through. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, crap, it's hard. Maybe I don't want to talk about this anymore. But then he talked about the same thing that I was feeling of. It's about laying these things down throughout your life. And so this is what I want to do. I want to go through these 14 stages of life, and we're going to go through this quick. This is not for you to remember. I want you to figure out where you are. And some of you may be at a couple different parts, but throughout life, these are the things that we usually progressively have to lay down, have to sacrifice, have to give up as we go. And I'll make a few comments on them. So figure out where you are in this process. The first step of giving up, the thing you have to give up, is the state of infancy. This is the idea that the entire world, everything out there is here to meet my needs. This is why little babies, they cry when anything doesn't make them happy. If they're hungry, if they're sleepy, if they have gas, whatever along the way, they just cry. Because they assume if they cry that someone will come and they will meet their needs. And so, first thing you have to give up is the state of infancy. The second thing you have to give up is the fantasy of omnipotence. I think guys get this better, and I can only say that, I believe that, but I'm not sure about girls, and I can only say that because am not and have never been, despite what the junior high boys said, a girl. So I just can't put myself in your shoes. But this is what I feel on it. The fantasy of omnipotence, and this is important, parents, you've got to hear this, this is so important. Like Halloween is coming up, and little boys love, grown men love to dress up as superheroes. Like we think superheroes are amazing, like Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, and this is why this is so important for you, is because we do not look at these as like comic book heroes, fictitious characters. When you're 4, these are options in your life. And you watch these, and you're not watching these like, isn't Superman cool? It's, I could beat him. Or, I don't know, I like the black suit more, but flying is sweet, and the laser thing with the eyes, I could go for that. And so these are options. This is why our kids' Halloween costumes, like if you get a Superman costume, little tag says, Kate will not allow you to fly. Caution. Like, this is important, because we think we can fly. Not making this stuff up. And so I just want to say, first of all, if your kid is dressing up as a superhero in a month, remind them that they are not a superhero. Watch them closely anytime they have the costume on. But that's something we eventually have to go up. The fantasy that we could be anything, that we could be a superhero. The third thing you have to go, I hope, is that I hope all of you have already given that. If you look at that and you go, yeah, that's the one I'm struggling with, counseling afterwards, up here, we'll get a really nice jacket for you to put on to keep you warm, and we'll take you to a nice home. Okay, so number 3, thing we have to get out is the desire for possession of parents. This idea that my parents are here to meet absolutely every need, everything in my life. The fourth one is the dependency of childhood. This idea that I am completely dependent on someone else and I cannot make decisions for myself. For some reason, we have this phenomenon in our culture where boys, between the ages of 18 to 30, 35, still struggle with number 4 of the dependency of childhood. And my advice to parents, it looks like this. Okay, number 5, the fifth thing you have to give up is the distorted image of your parents. This is how it works, and most of you have seen this. It goes, my parents are God, my parents are God, my parents are God. 12, my parents are the devil, my parents are the devil, my parents are the devil. And then somewhere there you go, oh my goodness, they're just people. Like they're not one or the other, like they're just people. That's amazing. So we have to give that up. The 6th one is, I can't say this word, I tried to say it in the first service. Something of adolescence. You could probably say it because you're smart. We'll just call it lots of potential of adolescence. You see this most in like sports drafts. Like I like watching the NFL draft for a number of reasons. But one of the things that always makes me laugh about the NFL draft is there's always like the young guy who's so athletic, who's like got all this potential, and they don't talk about him like he could be really good. He could be a Pro Bowler. He could even make the Hall of Fame. But they don't say it. They go, the sky is the limit. He could do anything he wants, ever. And it's like, no, it's not. The sky's not the limit. He couldn't do anything he wants. I mean, he could run the ball fast and score touchdowns, but that's about it. And in some ways, in our country, we maybe breed this a little too much because we get up front and we say the home of the brave, the land of the free, and we say, you can do anything you want to do with your life. No, you can't. Not a singer. I go through all the lessons in the world. I can try as hard as I can. I can sing in the shower. I can sing while going through my day. Not a singer. I'm not getting on American Idol unless if I'm one of the people in the first 2 shows who they make fun of. And so I can't do anything that I want to do. Now, I can be who I am, and I can work through those gifts, but I can't do anything who I want. And that's part of growing up. If you go, oh, I had these dreams. I could do this. I could do this. I could do that. And then you go, not so much. I can only do a few things. So we have to give up that. Lots of potential of adolescence. 7th thing you have to give up is the freedom of uncommitment. Also strongly correlated with the 4th one, which is the dependency of childhood. The 8th and 9th, agility of youth, the do anything, and 9th is the attractiveness of youth. Let me give you an example of this. In August, the teens, when they were going back to school, had a swim party. And I was like, swim party? Yeah, buddy. I'm going. And so we get down to the swim party, and all these boys are there, and they're jumping off the diving board, and they're doing flips. And do we know what a gainer is? I want to show you what a gainer is if you don't know. I need a mic. Here we go. Okay. Hey, this is on. Awesome. So if you are going to do a flip, so this is you, head, feet, you. You're very straight. If you were going to do a flip, you would come to the diving board and you would do you do a flip, and you would flip like this. You would go over, and your feet would land in the pool. If you would do a gainer, you would run up, and then you would jump the other way, rotate the other direction, and your feet would land in the pool. And so they're all down there. And if you're Jake O'Mara, you would run and jump. Love you, Jake. And so they're all down there, and they're doing flips, and they're doing gainers, and there's stuff like that. And so I get down there in my trunks, and they're like, Coach, Kevin, you can do it. And I kept trying, and I I just couldn't jump high enough, and I couldn't spin fast enough. And like, how are you guys spinning so fast? Like, jump up, and I tuck my legs, and I still don't spin. And I land on my head, and I land on my back. And eventually, I was so excited, because I eventually got it. And like, I was thrilled. I kept doing it over and over. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And so I'm down there, I feel all cool, because I'm down working with all the high school kids, and I'm like, yeah. There's no one else. Yeah, we did dinner. Cool. And so I was like all pumped up. And then 2 things happened. First of all, I woke up the next day and I just couldn't, like my back and my neck was so sore from landing on it. And the other thing is Bethany starts talking. She goes, and I forget who we were talking with, and I don't even know why it came up. But she goes, it was really interesting being down there because you didn't look like those boys anymore. And she goes, like a couple of years ago, like your stomachs, your stomachs, and stuff like that, you looked exactly the same, but now, you have no idea what you're saying to me right now. Anyway, you're an old man, and it looks like it. So, I gave that up in August, the agility and attractiveness of youth. 10th thing you have to give up is the fantasy of immortality, is what that is. We understand people die. We understand bad things happen, but we never think it's going to happen to us. This is why we hear incredible, terrible stories of people who text while they drive in the horrific accidents that they're in, and we go, oh, that's terrible, and then we continue doing it because we know that happens, but we assume it will never happen to us. And eventually we have to give that up, the fantasy of immortality. Sub-message, don't text while you drive. 11, the authority over your children, the understanding that you cannot control your kids and what they do. 12th thing that you have to give up is various forms of power, decision-making abilities that you have in your life. The 13th thing you have to give up is the independence of physical health, that you become reliant upon other people physically. And then the last thing you have to give up is life itself. And I hope as we go throughout that, you can see, hey, there are already some things in my life that I've had to lay down. There are already some things that I've had to sacrifice. And there are a lot of things ahead. But this is, so I want you to see, we are all somewhere on the spectrum of aging and laying down. And I believe the more able you are, the more willing you are to lay down the earlier things as you go through life, the better you will be at laying down the later things, which is far more difficult. But this is where I want our discussion to go. Normally when we talk about aging in the context of the Bible, 2 significant verses come up. And these are not bad verses, but they are this. 2 Corinthians 4:7 is one of them. 2 Corinthians 4:7 says, But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. It's saying the message that we have, the thing that we carry, the thing that has been done to our souls, we contain this in a jar of clay. Jars of clay in that day were common, they were breakable, they were disposable. And he's saying we have this message in bodies that will perish. So the power is from God, this message is from God, and it's not from us, it's our own strength. Which I'm sure is the encouraging part to you. Your body is disposable. Your body is breakable. Your body is perishable. The other one that we look at is this 2 Corinthians 4:16, just later on in the same chapter. He says, therefore do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. And here's the thing, I have heard lots of messages and I've heard lots of teachings on aging and how to age well. And those are the two that we usually pull out. And those are great verses and those are true. But here's the interesting thing to me, is that when the scope of the rest of the Bible talks about aging, it does not speak of it in the context of something that we give up. It speaks of it in the context of something that we give up so we can gain something better. It speaks of it of a trade that we make. Now that last verse that we looked at, it almost touched on that. And I'm kind of shaky ground, but I believe Paul is absolutely correct, but he did not go far enough. I believe he's right, he's true, but for what the rest of the Bible says, he could have taken it further. And so he says it like this. He says, though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. This is how I understand renewed. It's like you have a cup that's leaking, and people keep filling the cup. And it'll leak a little more, and then you fill it back up. That's not getting to a greater level, if that makes sense. That's just, hey, outwardly we're wasting away, but inwardly we are maintaining. We are doing just fine. We're being renewed. Got leaks, fill back up, inside we're good. But the rest of the Bible talks about it as when you're young, you have this, but as you age, you give it up, you trade it in to gain this. That's what that verse of Proverbs said. Proverbs said this, the glory of young men is their strength, gray hair, the splendor of the old. I mean, we read that as we go. The glory of young men is their strength. Great. He goes, no, this is a trade you should be happy to make. And so this is what I want to talk about today. Why should you be thrilled that you're getting older? And what do you have to do to make sure that that process, even though your body wastes away, even though your knees hurt when you run, why you should be happy to make that, and why that process is beneficial. If you have your Bible, I need you in Psalm 92. And here's the thing, we're only going to look at a few verses, but if you have your Bible on your phone, if you have your Bible, whatever, if it's a magazine version, I don't even know if they make that. But I want you to pull it out, because I want you to remember where this verse is. So this is Psalm 92. If you don't know where it is, it's on page 772. Not really. It's my yours. Okay, so this is Psalm 92, starting in verse 12. And it says this, the righteous flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming, the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him. I want to pull out a couple things, and then we'll get to the heart of that message. Some of the interesting things to me in that passage. It talks about the importance of being planted in the house of the Lord. We're going to talk about it today in the context of not being planted simply in church, but of what the planting is and what you're being rooted in your own life. One of the most interesting verses to me of that is it says, they will still bear fruit in old age. If I could sum up some conversations that I've heard from people who we would maybe describe as elderly, it's, do I still have a usefulness? Do I still have a purpose? Or am I simply an inconvenience? If we heard these things, nod your head if we're familiar in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, there we go. So there you go. That's me. Can I ask you that? But that statement, I think, is huge. That as you age, it is not just getting old, but they will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green. But at the very beginning, he says that how that will happen. And he compares two things. He says the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. And I want to talk to you for a little bit about palm trees and cedar trees. A cedar tree is majestic. It is awe-inspiring. If you stand in front of one, it towers over you and stretches out beyond what you think its branches could take. Cedar trees incite worshiping because it is, how is this thing possible? How is this thing amazing? It makes you feel small because of how great it is. Yet the interesting thing about cedar trees is that cedar trees can only grow in very specific climates, in only certain conditions. It cannot grow just anywhere. It grows best in valleys and by creeks or small rivers. And the reason for that with the cedar tree is because, if we could get that picture up there, the cedar tree's roots are very shallow. And what happens with their root system is their root system will only go a few feet deep, if that. Many of them will be above the surface. And then it will stretch out very, very far. And so cedar trees, when you look at them from the outside, you go, wow, that's amazing. But it can only grow in very certain conditions. And if I could say it like this, in ideal climates. But when the storm comes, and the winds pick up, and adversity hits, cedar trees topple, and they crack, and they break, because their roots are wide, but they are not deep. A palm tree, on the other hand, creates no awe, creates no wonder, creates no inspiration. Probably the only reason why you get excited about the palm tree is because you associate the palm tree with the beach. Yes, palm trees. But I don't think anybody ever sits underneath the palm tree and goes, isn't it amazing how it's long and skinny and then gets up there to just absolutely nothing? Wow! It's all game. Like no one gets under a palm tree and is like, whoa, that's incredible. But the interesting thing about the palm tree is a number of things. Palm trees grow in the harshest of climates. Palm trees can grow and flourish in the most difficult of situations. And the reason why is because when a palm tree is first planted, it will quickly sprout a web, a small ball root system that is spongy and it's soft to immediately give the tree nutrients. But as soon as it does that, it does not grow its roots wide. It grows its roots very, very deep. Almost every palm tree, the depth of the root exceeds the height of the tree. The depth of the root in the palm tree exceeds the height to which it grows, which leads it to do a number of interesting things. When you go to most trees, and you scratch the bark, or you cut the tree, or you go up to it and you just start pulling some of it off, you are killing the tree, because that is where all the nutrients are. Because the root system grows wide, the nutrients and the health and the food of the tree is stored on the outside. But if you go to a palm tree, you can cut it, you can crack it, you can scratch it, you can peel it, and it does no damage to the tree because the health is at the core. I'm going to say that again and see if you can catch what I'm really saying. When the root system is shallow and wide, if you cut it, if you scratch it, if you damage it in any way on the outside, you are killing the tree. But when the roots grow deep, you can cut it, You can scratch it. You can prick it. You can do all sorts of things. And it does not damage it. Because the health, the nutrients are at the core. The other thing that is amazing about the palm tree because of the root system is that when adversity strikes, when storms come, when difficult situations come up, palm trees do not crack, they bend. That when the winds and the waves and the hurricanes hit, palm trees do not break, they do not splinter. They know how to bend because the root system is so deep. Palm trees in extremely adverse conditions can actually bend and be flexible so far that they will touch the ground, and when the storm goes away, they will stand back up again stronger and more flexible than they were before. Say it like this. There's depth and a flexibility that can only be attained through deep roots. There is a depth and a flexibility that can only be attained through deep roots. We're going to talk about depth in a minute. I want to talk about the flexibility side right now. Last night we got home. We've been in a conference for a couple days, and we're hanging out with my 2-year-old, Maddie. And Maddie has this wonderful, but she has this obsession with iPads, something that she shares with many of you. And the interesting thing about Maddie is Maddie sees every iPad as Maddie's iPad. And so she will come up to you while you are looking at stuff, playing something, and she will go, Maddie's iPad. No, Daddy's iPad. Maddie's iPad. No, Maddie's iPad. And then eventually I gave her the iPad because I wanted to watch the baseball game, and I was tired of this conversation. And so she goes through there, and she's sitting, and she's playing, and she's doing her thing, and eventually it's time for her to go to bed. And I say, Maddie, we need to go to bed. She goes, no, Maddie's iPad. No, Maddie, we need to go to bed. Maddie's iPad. Maddie, no, it's Daddy's iPad, and you're going to bed. Maddie's iPad. And so I take the iPad out of her hands, and she turns on the couch, buries her head in the couch, and starts to cry. She throws a fit. Because if I took what was hers, she had no concept of that. She thought her having the iPad was the most important thing in the world. And if somebody was going to mess with that, she could not internally deal with that situation. Now here's the thing. I can accept that from my 2-year-old. I would accept it a little less from a 10-year-old. I would have no tolerance for it from an 18-year-old. And if a 30, 40, 50-year-old did that, I would laugh at them and think they were ridiculous. Because Maddie's roots are shallow. And they should be shallow because of her age. But her roots are shallow, so she has no concept or understanding of how to deal with things that don't go her way. Let's get a little specific. In general, I believe you're smart enough to figure out how this fleshes out in your life. And you're smart enough to figure out what the deep roots mean and what it means to be flexible, and maybe like this, where it means to be flexible. But I want to talk about this one specific instance because I want to bring some honor to some people who are in the church. The conversation that I hear most often in church, and that's the circle I run in. I imagine you hear this from time to time, but you don't hear it at the level that I do, is how could you have this and that thing for worship? That's ridiculous. How is that possible that you could do those things and have them for worship? That's not right. That's not godly. That's not how it was meant to be, which I could give a whole number of thoughts along the way in terms of the fact, like, do you think the disciples were actually walking around with an organ and every single time Jesus taught on the go ahead, sermon on that, we're ready to go. But like, I don't know what that concept is there, but there's this idea that for some reason, the style is what's core. The style is what's essential. And what usually happens on this, and this is another rant that I will divulge to you, unfortunately, so just humor me, is normally what happens when that goes along is that they say, oh, it's not the style, it's the lyrics. It's not the style that I have a problem with, it's the substance. When you sing these songs, it just repeats the same thing over and over again, and there is no depth there. To which I want to say to these people, have you ever looked through a hymnal? Like, have you ever flipped through a hymnal? It says the same thing over and over again. Some of these writers, and I will say it, some of my favorite songs in the world are hymns. But some of these writers had no creativity whatsoever, and I think they paid off the publisher. Just leveling with you. But somewhere along the way, we get this idea that this is what was essential. And that if you're going to have this, then you're forsaking what absolutely must be there. Say it a little further. The idea that for some reason when you come to church, you have to dress in a certain way. What? One of the most incredible examples we have in the entire Bible of worship is a lady who knelt at Jesus' feet, poured perfume on them, and then washed them with her hair. Now, on another note, please don't do it. It should freak me out. But that is not her being prim and proper. And if I could just be very clear, why we planted this church originally, over 2 years ago now, is because, and I'm not saying this to be me, but again, those of you who are with us, I want to bring some honor to you in terms of how I feel. I looked at my life, and I looked at the people who were the saints of the church. You understand what I'm saying right there, right? The saints of the church. And I said, I don't want her to grow up like them. Because there is no bend, there is no flexibility, and there are no deep roots. And many of you who are here, and you've been here with us from the very start, and others of you, and this is the even more incredible part, is you came in along the way. And if I could just be clear, you don't love everything. And when the electric guitar gets played, you go, ah, it hurts. But you're still here. Because you understand that is not the core. And I want to tell you this. It's because your roots are deep. I had a conversation with a man, an older man, who his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren had started coming into church because of some of these stylistic things. And he did not like them. He liked his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren in church, but he did not like what was being done. And I asked him, which do you care more about, them being here and worshiping God, or you getting what you're used to? And he didn't directly answer me, but he said, I just don't see why we can't do it the way we did it. And I think he's a wonderful person. But that is evidence of shallow roots. And so this is why I'm telling you all this. Because if you're here, you're not here because you're complaining. Because no one can be here because their parent or great-grandparent or great-great-grandparent came here and built the whatever, because we haven't been around that long, which is wonderful. There's going to come a day when you're going to look around and you're going to go, I don't like what's being done. Not what's being taught, not where we're going, but you're going to go stylistically, I don't love what's happening here. I'll tell you this, your willingness in that moment to bend so what is core, what is essential can stay the same is evidence of how deep or how shallow your roots are. This is why in church I believe it's so incredibly important to be a part of a church. And I'm not saying this as a plug. I'm saying this because I want some of you to take this next step. Left to our own, left on our own, I believe personal Bible study is incredibly important. I believe getting in the Word, reading through it, even if you don't understand it and praying, is incredibly important. But left on our own, our tendency will always be to develop shallow roots because we're going to gravitate towards the things that are easy to us and the things that other people don't get nearly as well as we do. And that is not a call to deep roots. That is not a call to being planted, and that leads to no depth, and it leads to no flexibility on things that aren't that important. And so I believe being a part of a church is incredibly important. I believe being, hear me, rooted, planted in a church is incredibly important. Now, here's the plug, and I'm not saying this because you should do this message, blah, 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 whatever the preachers say here. Next week we're doing what we call our partnership class. And this is, hey, if you want to say I'm in, and you come, and we take you through some of the specifics on who we are, and you get to understand about where we came from and where we're headed as a church. And I'll tell you, if you're interested in that, come next week, and it'll just be right after service, and it'll last for a couple hours, and we take care of food, and we take care of child care for you, because we want it to be easy. We don't want it to be a hassle for you. But if you're sitting here and you're going, you know what, I need that rooting, I need that planting, I would just encourage you to be a part of that. That's flexibility. I want to talk about the depth. Steep root system leads to a depth. If you put in those deep roots, if you say, I'm not worried about physical youth, I'm not worried about the looks, the agility, all those other things, you are not aging. What you're doing is you're trading one kind of depth for a better kind. To be clear here. When you're young, when we take the iPad from Maddie, she has no concept of understanding how this is okay, how this is possible, and so she throws a fit. But as you further plant yourself, as you put in those deeper roots, you do not, hear me, you do not age. What happens is you lose your physical youth, and in turn you gain a mental youth. This is what a guy by the name of Carlos Fuentes, who's an internationally known novelist, says. He says, I really think youth is something you win from age. Read that again, he's got another paragraph. I really think youth is something you win from age. You are rather old and stupid when you are young. The youngest men I ever met in my life were Luis Buñuel, who made his greatest films between the ages of 60 and 80, and Arthur Rubinstein, a man who became a genius at 80, being able to strike a note by raising his hand to heaven and making it fall exactly as Beethoven demanded. These are men who earned their youth. It took them 80 years to become young. And so you do not age. If you say, I'm going to focus on roots, I'm going to focus on the depth, I'm going to focus on where I am planted, you do not age. You merely trade your physical youth, your physical strength, for a mental depth and a mental flexibility and a spiritual source of power that you could not have when you were 12, when you were 20, when you were 30, when you were 40. And so I want to hear, this is what I'm saying. Don't get old. Just decide, don't get old. You go, well, I'm getting old anyway. Birthday every year. It comes. I try to stop it, but it comes every year. I don't know what I mean. No, don't get old. Go from physical youth to mental youth. It's better. It's better on this side. People who do it right, people who live their life in this way and have gladly laid down the different things, have gladly made these sacrifices and laid them down even when they're difficult, have attained a mental youth, a spiritual youthfulness, depth, and flexibility that they could have never had when they're young. I want to give you an example of that depth. In 1994, the band 9 Inch Nails. Any 9 Inch Nails fans? Whatever. The band 9 Inch Nails released their second album, The Downward Spiral. The hit song on that album was a song by the name of Hurt. The song was written as a characterization, as a metaphor for the lead singer, Trent Reznor's his struggles with suicide, his struggles with hurting himself as he went through difficult things in his life. The song was actually so popular that it received a Grammy nomination later on for Best Rock Song. A couple years later, Johnny Cash came along, late in his life, about to release what would be his final album, and he asked if he could cover the song. And Trent Reznor, the lead singer, the guy who wrote it, said he was flattered, but it sounded a little gimmicky. And his response was, I don't understand how someone his age and his position could grasp the lyrics that I'm singing. So Johnny Cash went ahead, he gave him permission. Johnny Cash went ahead and recorded the song. And along with the song, they produced a music video that had different images and videos of Johnny Cash's life. And they sent the DVD of the music video to Trent Reznor before they released it from the music studios. And when Trent Reznor saw it, this was his response. He says, I popped the video in, and wow, tears welling, silence, goosebumps. Wow, I felt like I just lost my girlfriend because that song isn't mine anymore. He said, when I heard him sing, the lyrics of hurt, he sang it with a depth that I do not know now in my life. This is what we're going to do. I want to play that song for you. I want you to feel that depth. And then we're going to spend some time in worship. So band, if you guys would go ahead and come up and let's play that. We're going to do something a little different for this last song. And this may make some of you feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. There are different positions, different expressions of worship. And normally as a church, we're pretty solid if we're all standing and singing. But one of the signs of worship is this. If I can just be clear, this is not go guitar, go drums, I'm feeling this. This is I surrender. It is what we're singing, what we're saying, how we're worshiping. I am placing myself in submission. I am placing myself under that authority. I surrender to what that is saying. I surrender to what that means in my life. And this is what I'm going to ask you to do. And it's going to be kind of hard for some of you. That's okay. You need to take this step. Because one of the easiest things for us to do in life is that as we age, as different things don't work how they should, and we can't do what we used to, is to take open hands and we're open to God, and we begin to close it, and we begin to grasp, and we're no longer willing to let things go. And as we become tired, and as we become weaker, it is easier to lose that sense of surrender. This is what we're doing. For this last song we're going to sing, it's titled Give Me Faith, and it's got this incredibly powerful bridge. It says, I may be weak, but your spirit is strong in me. My flesh may fail, but my God is stronger still. This is what I'm going to ask you to do. When we start singing, the lyrics begin, I want you to raise your hands and surrender. And I want you to keep it up throughout the entire song. The song is long. And your arm is going to get tired. And you're going to want to put it down. But I want this to be a symbol, a metaphor to you in your life, that as I get tired and as I get weaker, the surrender gets harder, but I am still surrendered. And as your shoulder gets weak, your voice and your worship should become stronger. So as we sing, I want to encourage you to raise your hands and to keep it up.
Lord, I thank you again for just bringing us all here today. And just allowing us to worship you, such a great and amazing God. And Lord, I pray that you would speak to us in our lives, Lord.